What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today, taking an early preview at the New York Giants offensive line for the 2025 season. Before I dive into it, I just want to say thank you to everybody who left birthday wishes for me in yesterday's comment section of yesterday's episode. Really do appreciate it. It meant the world to me. Love the FSG family, and thank you guys so much for just showing me some love in yesterday's comment section. But today, diving into a new topic, talking about the Giants offensive line. Training camp 20 days away. That's right. We are officially under 3 weeks away from the start of training camp, which kicks off for the Giants on July 23rd. I believe the rookies actually report a week early, I think on July 15th. So we're really close to training camp. This month is going to fly by, as they tend to do, and it's right around the corner. The Giants are going to be back on the practice field and in no time going to be putting on the pads and ramping up for the start of the 2025 season. Can't wait for it. Super excited. And as you all know, I'm really excited about this upcoming season because the Giants have a quarterback that I think is watchable, that I think is above average, or at least average, right, with Russell Wilson. But this offense, while it should see improvement, it should make progress and take steps forward. How far it's able to go is going to depend largely on the performance of the offensive line, as is always the case for every offense in the NFL. But as we know, for the New York Giants, over the last several years, and quite honestly, for the better part of the last decade, maybe even longer, the offensive line has been a weakness for the Giants. It's been a struggle to get a consistent 5 players on the field, and it's been a struggle to get an efficient full season performance out of the unit for again, a decade now. And while the Giants have some talent on this offensive line, there's been problems with developing certain talent. There's been problems with certain talent staying healthy. And so I'm going to go through here and just preview this New York Giants offensive line, talk about the guys who I think are crucial, the guys who I think are in make or break years, and the guys who I think you need to keep an eye on as potential risers in this unit who could make more of an impact than you would initially expect. So we're going to go through and start off with Andrew Thomas. I want to talk about Andrew Thomas because I think that in many ways, he's under pressure to perform this year. This is a very important season for Andrew Thomas, and I know a lot of fans are going to immediately be like, under pressure? He's one of our best players. What pressure is he under? Well, he's under pressure to be on the football field this year. Quite frankly, he hasn't been available enough. He played in only 6 games last year, played in only 10 games the year prior to that. And over these last 2 years, the Giants offense has suffered greatly because of Andrew Thomas's absence. It's not his fault. His injuries are just unfortunate bad break moments, right? There was a blocked field goal in week 1 of the 2023 season, and he was chasing that down and he pulled a hamstring. That's a freak accident. Last year, I believe somebody kind of rolled up on him and he pulled the bottom of his foot and he needed season-ending surgery. It's not his fault, and it's bad luck, but even still, the Giants can't get by without him. That much has been clear. He is their most valuable player because when Andrew Thomas is on the field, the offensive line actually plays quite well, and the offense is able to move the ball. But as soon as Andrew Thomas comes off of the field, it all falls apart. The offense can no longer move the ball, and the offensive line completely just falls to the wayside. So Andrew Thomas needs to be healthy this season. Now, from what we know, surgery was a success. They got it done early so that he could have enough time to progress and recover. And it does sound as though he is doing well in his recovery and should be good for the start of training camp as long as the reports are accurate. So I'm excited for Andrew Thomas to get back on the field once again, considering he got that big payday following the 2022 season, got a massive extension to pay him as one of the most highly paid offensive linemen in the NFL at the time that it was signed. The Giants have not seen returns on that investment so far because the 2 seasons that he's played under this extension have both been lost largely due to injuries. So the Giants need Andrew Thomas this season, but there's really not much more to say about Andrew Thomas. I think we all know how great he is. He's a former second-team All-Pro. When he's healthy, he is among the top 5 to 10 best offensive tackles in the NFL. I think that's pretty easily acceptable as truth. But again, it's just about his health, and staying healthy is of the utmost importance for Andrew Thomas. I think this offense sinks or swims based on whether or not Andrew Thomas is on the field. Because when he's on the field, he's excellent. Just isn't on the field enough. But let's also talk about the center position, because I think John Michael Schmitz is entering a pretty crucial year 3 of his career. I mean, when the Giants drafted him, we were thrilled about it. Like myself included, all Giants fans were pretty excited because this is a guy that got a lot of chatter as a back end of the first round pick or early round 2. Giants ended up taking him, I think, somewhere around pick 50, kind of late in the middle of the second round, if I remember correctly. He just fell right into their laps, and it was a steal at the time. And the reason that it was such a steal in the eyes of so many fans and analysts alike is because John Michael Schmitz entered the league with this label, which was pro ready prospect. That label set a lot of really high expectations for this rookie that ultimately had him thrust into the starting lineup from week 1. And he has not lived up to those expectations. He clearly was not as pro ready as the analysts, fans, and coaches all believed because John Michael Schmitz has had a lot of growing pains. Granted, he's also had a lot of injuries. He's missed quite a bit of time due to injuries, and he's also played through injuries, and they've definitely impacted his performance. 2025, we need a healthy John Michael Schmitz the same way we need a healthy Andrew Thomas. But we also need him to start demonstrating progress and showing that development because, unfortunately, after 3 years, the Giants might look at this and say, hey, he hasn't made any progress. We might need to find a replacement option. And that replacement option actually could be on the roster. And we're going to get to that in a second. But I do think this is a bit of a make or break year for John Michael Schmitz. I think the pressure is on for him to not only stay healthy, but to improve his performance and start to demonstrate some development. It's been 2 years now. He's kind of been in and out of the lineup. But I do think going into year 3, we need to see some progress. And what I will say, to the credit of John Michael Schmitz and why I do think we will see some of that progress, the Giants made a change at quarterback. And I think that directly impacts the center position in a positive manner because for a rookie to be in the starting lineup at the center position, there is so much put onto that plate. There's so much responsibility on the center's shoulders because the center is constantly communicating not just with the quarterback, but also with the rest of the offensive line. And for a rookie coming out of Minnesota, it's a big difference playing there versus playing in the Big Apple at the NFL stage. And so John Michael Schmitz, I think, has had a little bit of a struggle making that transition. Although he was a very high football IQ player coming out of college, your high football IQ in college is not the same as high football IQ in the NFL. And so I think that having an experienced veteran like Russell Wilson, who's a 10-time Pro Bowler, a former Super Bowl champion, a future Hall of Famer, all of the labels that we attach to him remain true. But having that experience and having the ability for the quarterback to say, hey, the protection needs to slide this way. Hey, that's the mic. Let's identify this guy as the blitzer. Let's go ahead and recognize that it's this coverage and not that one, even though they're trying to disguise it. He could do all of those things and read the defense at the line of scrimmage and help the center out and help make some of those calls that otherwise would have fallen onto the center. And honestly, I do think the Giants' last quarterback room, again, I'm not going to name names, but you all know who I'm talking about, had a very tough time reading defenses and I think would misdiagnose what the defense really is, read it incorrectly, and ultimately call the wrong protections and call the wrong signals to the offensive line and to the receivers. And that would result in everybody looking bad, not just the quarterback, but the center and the offensive line will look bad as a result of a missed call from the quarterback. So I think that with a veteran and an experienced player like Russell Wilson under center, the center position is going to perform at a higher level because now I think John Michael Schmitz has a little less to worry about. He knows that the calls are right. He knows that Russell Wilson's got his back. Just block the man in front of you, right? I think that's really what it comes down to now for JMS. So I think we are going to see progress from him, but again, we kind of need to entering year 3 of his career. But if we don't see progress from JMS, who's the replacement plan at center? Now, this might sound a bit surprising to you, but I think the replacement plan at center would actually end up being rookie 5th-round pick Marcus Mbow. Now, I know that the Giants drafted Marcus Mbow to play tackle, and going from tackle to center is quite a stretch. But this is a 6'5", 300 pound, or 6'3". I believe he's 6'3", 303 pound offensive tackle. That's wildly undersized. Now, his arms are pretty long for a guy his height, which does allow him to play the tackle position. He has experience starting 2 seasons at right tackle at Purdue, but he also did start 1 season at right guard. However, with his size, he's probably more translatable to the interior of the offensive line, which does, of course, include the guard position that he has experience in, but also will include the center position. According to John Schmelk of Giants.com, Marcus Mbow has, since the conclusion of the final or of his last collegiate season, he has been practicing at all 5 positions on the offensive line. That means right tackle, right guard, left tackle, left guard, and center. And I do think because of his size and the strengths and weaknesses in his game, he could translate quite well at the next level to the center position and make that transition if the Giants need him to. Ultimately, I think they would like him to compete at right tackle and one day earn that starting job because that is such a valuable position. And having a starting right tackle on a rookie contract from the fifth round would be tremendous value. But he's probably going to slide into guard at some point because that's where he physically fits best. But if he maybe struggles there, or if John Michael Schmitz just struggles at center and they need to make a change, I could absolutely see Marcus Mbow being the backup plan at that position, getting in there at center. But I will say I could see him being the backup plan at all five positions on the offensive line. Let's say Jermaine Illuminor were to get injured this season or to just really struggle at right tackle. The Giants need to make a change. I do think Marcus Mbow would be the first man up to get in the lineup. I think he would get that first call over Evan Neal, who I think the Giants are pretty intentional about keeping at left guard and developing him there. And we'll talk about him a little bit more in just a moment here. But if there were an injury at right tackle, I think Marcus Mbow gets the first call. And then at left tackle, if Andrew Thomas were to get injured once again this season, I don't think Marcus Mbow gets the first call there since he is more native to the right side of the line. I think that James Hudson III would probably get in at left tackle. The Giants signed him to a 2-year contract this offseason. That veteran would probably slide in at left tackle. But if he struggles as well or he gets injured as well, and we know that that's possible because the Giants had, I think, like 3 left tackle injuries last year. They were cycling through them. I do think Marcus Mbow would be second or third or fourth string, but probably third string left tackle as well, and also would be in the top 3 at left guard. I think it's going to be John Runyon, of course, as a starter. I think Evan Neal behind him in the second team. And then it could be Josh Azito as the third string left guard, and also he could be the backup left tackle as well. But I do think Josh Azito's on the roster bubble right now, and they could save a little bit of money by cutting him, and they could actually just roll with Marcus Mbow as a potential higher potential and possibly better option to do the same things that Josh Azito is going to do anyway. So Marcus Mbow, I think, really could be the key to the depth of this offensive line just because he has the versatility. He is Mr. Versatility himself. He has the ability to move all over the line and really compete anywhere. And while he hasn't found one set home just yet on the line, we haven't even gotten to training camp. The Giants might decide, hey, he's really good at this position. Let's keep him there. Let's specialize him in that position. That's totally possible. But for now, I think that they view him as a developmental guy. They're not trying to rush onto the field, but they know that when there is an opening, he's going to be able to take the call and get in the lineup because he has that versatility and now is gaining this experience of playing all 5 positions on the offensive line. So I'm really excited about Marcus Mbow. I think, it was an absolute steal in the 5th round. Many people had him going in the 3rd round, myself included. I did several mock drafts on EmpireSportsMedia.com where I had him going to the Giants in the 3rd round. So when he was there in round 5, I was doing backflips and they drafted him. And I think that was an excellent selection. I do think he's going to find a home on this offensive line long term. So really like Marcus Mbow. And just one last clarifying piece here. When I say that he's a little bit undersized for the tackle position, like I said, I believe he's around 6'3", 305 pounds. For comparison's sake, Evan Neal's 6'8". Not that that's a great comparison because, he's not a great player, but I believe Andrew Thomas is 6'7" as well. So he's quite undersized in terms of his height. He does have good length, but not quite there when compared to guys like Andrew Thomas and some of these other massive offensive tackles that bookend these offensive lines in the league. So Marcus Mbow ultimately, I think, makes his way to the interior, whether that's guard or even center, remains to be seen, but we shall see. Now, before I do some more individual player profiles here on this offensive line, one thing that I want to bring up is the importance of sack avoidance. And I bring that up because I wrote an article today on EmpireSportsMedia.com kind of evaluating one core weakness that Russell Wilson possesses, and that is his sack avoidance. According to John Schmelk of Giants.com, over the past 5 seasons, Wilson's 8.7% sack rate is tied for the 8th highest. If you watch Russell Wilson play, there are things he does really well. He's very good at throwing the ball downfield. He's got tremendous deep ball accuracy. He's a very smart quarterback, high football IQ, all those things, we praise him for. They're true. But one thing that he doesn't do well necessarily is get the ball out of his hands in a hurry. Sometimes he does try to big play hunt, holds on to it, doesn't sense the pressure, and does take some sacks. He takes sacks at quite a high rate, and he does invite pressure onto his own plate. So one of the things that the Giants do need to be careful of is Russell Wilson's tendency to maybe hold the ball a second longer while looking for the deep shot and ultimately taking some sacks. So what they need is really strong offensive line play, because if the offensive line play is poor, it's going to expose this weakness from Russell Wilson, and there's going to be a lot of sacks taken by the Giants offense this year. But also, I do think this falls on Brian Daboll a little bit too, to know your personnel, understand that Russell Wilson can be prone to taking sacks, and calling a passing offense that gets the ball out of his hands in a hurry. Now, that hasn't been a problem for Daboll. He calls a very quick passing game. He does like to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands in a hurry. The problem has been the hurry hasn't been there on behalf of the quarterbacks. They've been a tick late. They've been throwing the ball inaccurately, and it's not in stride. And you guys have heard me go over that many, many times on this channel, how the pass would be inaccurate and, the receivers have to slow down and are unable to turn up fields. Russell Wilson has that aspect of the game down. He's accurate. He can throw on time, but it's just going to depend on how quick of a passing game Brian Daboll wants to implement. But I do think with a quarterback who does tend to big play hunt and take sacks as a result, it will be important for the Giants to call a quick passing offense this season. So expect a very West Coast scheme this year. The Giants scheme is pretty West Coast, but I would say it was more West Coast in 2022 when Mike Kafka was calling the plays. And so we don't have an answer as to who's calling the plays this season, whether that's going to be Daboll or Kafka. But I do think there's a good chance it will be Kafka. And if it is Kafka, I do think we're going to see a lot of quick passes in order to mitigate the offensive line and its potential weakness as a unit for this offense. So keep an eye on that. I wanted to bring that up for Russell Wilson and his sack avoidance or struggles with sack avoidance. Now, talking some more about this depth, I do think that the Giants did improve the depth on their offensive line. Like I mentioned, Marcus Mbow, I think that he's like the perfect depth piece to have in development as a rookie. I think that Evan Neal is viewed now, obviously, as a depth piece, not a starter. But I do have some hope that he can develop into a quality backup at left guard. I don't know what that means for the Giants long term since he's in the final year of his contract. But I do think that there is an avenue for him to see the field this season at left guard and hopefully make an impact. I don't know. And I also like that they brought in some bodies at the tackle positions. Not that James Hudson III is a great player, neither is Stone Forsythe, but the fact that the Giants have players now that can step in and start games in a pinch if you need to is important, because last year, they were pulling guys like Chris Hubbard off of the San Francisco 49ers practice squad midseason. 2 years ago, they were pulling Justin Pugh off of his goddamn couch. So let's not find ourselves in that position anymore. Let's go out there and pick up some veterans. That's what the Giants said to themselves. That's what they did. So Stone Forsythe and James Hudson III, those are the backup tackles. And I do think that's an improvement and a step in the right direction for the Giants to be proactive in adding depth to the offensive line during free agency rather than during the middle of the regular season. And then there's Josh Azita, who's still developing. They've also got some depth guys on the interior like Jake Kubas, who I know a few of you, Candyman, shout out to you in the comment section. I know you're a big fan of him. Jake Kubas could be a player that develops into something. I know the Giants seem to internally in the organization really like him and believe in him. So maybe he's one of those guys that slots in as a backup guard or center. And then there's also Austin Schlottman. That's a guy who the Giants signed last year. I believe he got injured in training camp and missed the year, but he's still under contract. That's another player to keep an eye on the interior. But essentially, I'm bringing up all these names and making the point here that the Giants' offensive line has depth. And that's something that we haven't been able to say in years past. And so I will give credit to the front office, to Joe Schoen, for being proactive in adding depth to this roster at the offensive line spot. But, going back into that starting lineup, we talked about Andrew Thomas. Let's talk a little bit about Jermaine Illuminor and the pressure that he might be under to perform this year. And I don't think he's under a ton of pressure because he's a good player for the Giants. He's a starter and his job is safe. Yeah, but this is also the final year of his contract. He signed a 2-year deal with the Giants last offseason. He's looking for a payday. If he performs at a really high level this season, that $7 million per year that he's making on this current deal could double next year. If he performs at a high level, he could be making $14 million per year on his next contract. And I think that Jermaine Illuminor is well aware of that. And I think he's going to go out there and he's going to try to compete for every rep that he can get and be the Giants' full starter through all 17 games this season. But I really like Jermaine Illuminor. I think he's one of the Giants' most underrated players and underappreciated players, although I do think a lot of fans appreciate him and what he brings to the field. But just bringing that stability to the right tackle position is important. And now what it's going to come down to for me, I can actually say that I feel comfortable at left tackle if Thomas is healthy. I feel comfortable at right tackle if Illuminor is healthy. I'm just really scared about the interior of this offensive line. What are we going to get from JMS? We obviously talked about that already. John Runyon Jr. is a player that the Giants paid $10 million per season to, and he is a good left guard, but he's not necessarily a great left guard and hasn't been in his career. Is there more to unlock? Can he take a step forward? Will he be healthy to do so this year? What are we going to get out of him relative to the value of his contract? I'm not entirely sure. And then at right guard, that was a big point of weakness for the Giants. The expectation was they were going to go spend big time money at right guard this offseason. They got in a bidding war. They tried to sign Will Fries. He ended up signing with the Minnesota Vikings. They missed out. Instead of pivoting to a new guard, they pivoted to safety and signed Javon Holland. And the right guard position basically just got bandaged. And now they're running it back with Greg Van Roten, who was a starter last year. But Greg Van Roten's now 35, another season under his belt, another year closer to retirement, and another year of presumed regression is set to take place. So where I have the most concern on this offensive line is the right guard position. And again, the Giants didn't add a lot of talent to that position behind him. Marcus Mbow being the obvious guy, fifth-round pick, who could compete at right guard, but do we want a fifth-round rookie thrown into the fire like that? Not necessarily. Even though we think he's a third-round talent, still you don't want to rush him onto the field. So we'll ultimately have to see if Greg Van Roten's able to give the Giants another solid 17 games this year like he did last year. Like, to his credit, he played some good football. I didn't think he was a liability in any way, shape, or form. But can he do that again this year is going to be a big question. So that's my biggest point of contention with this offensive line is the right guard spot and the lack of progress that the Giants made to upgrade that position this offseason. But hey, hopefully long-term, Marcus Mbow does take that job and runs with it. I would love to see that happen. But overall, I'm feeling a little bit iffy about the offensive line going into 2025. I like that they added some depth. I like the young, talented piece that they added in Marcus Mbow. I think that they're making the right move, putting Evan Neal at left guard. I think that's the best way to develop him. And I do also, also like the tackle positions. But the question is just, can some of these young guys take steps forward, and can this unit stay healthy? Because continuity on the offensive line is everything. It's so crucial for there to be continuity on the offensive line. Can the Giants actually have the same starting five throughout the year? That's going to be a big question. So it's going to be up to those guys. It's going to be up to Carmen Bracillo in the second year of his Giants tenure. I thought that he made some decent progress with some of those guys last year. They cut their total sack rate from 85 in 2023 down to the 40s or 50s, whatever it was last year. So still they ranked 11th in total sacks surrendered, but that's a big difference from first in 2023. So we'll see ultimately what the offensive line is able to provide. Like I said, I have some concerns, but I also do have some reasons for optimism. But I'm also curious to hear your guys' reasons for concerns or optimism down below in the comment section. So make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, comment your thoughts down below in that comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.